There's a glaring irony that in the same week the Supreme Court announced it will hear cases challenging race-based admission policies at colleges and universities, a retiring justice and the president made the announcement that his replacement will be selected explicitly and exclusively on the basis of race, meaning that come fall, one of the justices on the court possibly striking down affirmative action will be there because of affirmative action, not inferred, but outright stated. On Thursday, the president said black and woman are the primary criteria in his selection. All other considerations are secondary.
I've made no decision except one. The person I will nominate will be someone with extraordinary qualifications, character, experience, and integrity. And that person will be the first black woman ever nominated to the United States Supreme Court.
Law professor Jonathan Turley has an important piece written at the time of Biden's campaign pledge in March of 2020, noting that this race and gender prioritizing selection policy would be unconstitutional in almost any other government hiring decision and illegal in many private sector contexts by virtue of the Civil Rights Act. As usual, if Joe and company do it, it's fine. But if you do it, it's a lawsuit to sue you into the ground and malicious media treatment to make sure that your reputation never recovers. Not on the basis of any principle, of course, just on the basis that they are your moral superiors. Anything goes when the good guys do it, and lucky for them, they are always the good guys. And while they claim the historical significance of the moment, another irony is this black woman pledge is only skin deep. It's superficial. I think even the proponents of this absurdity would acknowledge this isn't actually about pigmentation or reproductive equipment. These are just proxies for other things. And cynically, but I would say accurately, the demographics are just packaging for the ideology. The ideology is the sundae, and the race and gender are just the cherry on top, and it's very clear which one takes priority. It's not Clarence Thomas they're after, and they certainly wouldn't be satisfied with Clarence in drag either. They want Ruth Bader Ginsburg in blackface, and they would gladly take her reanimated corpse with a paint job long before they would ever take any black woman who dared disagree with them, which indicates just how important or not important these demographic characteristics actually are to the people who claim to value them. But in fairness and accuracy in characterizing this ridiculousness, even those advocating this idea would and do acknowledge that the demographics are just a proxy for other values. They just deny that the other value is ideological subservience. As we'll get to, they'll say things like representation or depoliticizing the court or better consideration for the impacts of the court's decisions. These are all the supposed reasons and benefits for making this decision in this way. And even if we grant these values as noble and authentic, listen closely to the near silence of what Democrats don't mention: fidelity to the law and to the Constitution. Because that's not just a consideration for the candidate for this job, that is the only relevant consideration, but they rarely or never mention it. Because at least in its design and its intent, the Supreme Court is a very simple institution tasked with answering a very simple question. What does the law say? Not what do you say, not what do the activists say, not what does the majority say. Those are all political considerations that aren't just distractions, they are derelictions of the job. Confirming a justice based on these factors is like signing a quarterback because he's a nice guy. That's great. I'm sure he's a very cool dude to get a beer with, but his job is reading the defense and throwing the ball to the right spot. And if he doesn't do that, he's not doing his job, and your team loses, no matter how cool or nice or well-meaning he is when he throws that pick six. And a lot of this talk is based on either a fundamental misunderstanding of what the court and its purpose are, or a deliberate attempt at confusing that issue. You decide. I personally am running very low on goodwill after watching this movie on rerun dozens of times now, but whatever the motive, the fundamental premise behind this black woman push is representation. That's what Biden referenced when he made this pledge on the debate stage 2 years ago.
I'll appoint the first black woman to the courts. It's required that they have representation now. It's long overdue.
It's what Judiciary Committee member Mazie Hirono, one of the senators who will be questioning this nominee, referenced in promoting this idea.
Significant decision by the president to nominate a black woman is, as I said, significant. It certainly adds to the diversity of the court to make the court a lot more representative of the diversity in our country.
And the former NAACP leader Ben Jealous wrote the same in a USA Today op-ed this week. Having a black woman on the Supreme Court creates representation and inclusion, and through that, justice, which is, ironically, a fundamental misrepresentation of what the court is. The Supreme Court does not represent people. The Supreme Court does not represent interests. The Supreme Court represents one thing, and only that thing, the Constitution and federal law as written. The Supreme Court does not have partisan or interest group loyalties. The court's only loyalty is to the set of rules that applies neutrally to us all. It is not the Supreme Court's job to represent political will. That's Congress, which is why there are only 9 Supreme Court justices and 435 congressmen, 535 when you count the Senate. Just by that numerical reality, representation on the court isn't just outside of its design, it's impossible to achieve. Where's the gay guy? Where's the Muslim? Where's the transgender furry amputee? There isn't a way to represent every political perspective, let alone every demographic group on a 9-member court, because it was not designed to do that. And perhaps they say, well, yeah, that's why we should expand the court to 13 or 15, or hell, just even it out. Make it 535 justices. Why not? That'll really maximize the representation. Then explain what the difference is between the court and Congress. Because that just sounds like a backup Congress for you to use whenever you don't get your political way. And frustratingly, it is, in fact, constitutional fidelity and a commitment to the rule of law that would actually achieve this representation goal. If you like political decisions left in the hands of the people and their representation, great. Then choose a constitutionally faithful judge who understands his role is to defer to state legislatures and to Congress on all matters where the Constitution is silent. If you like representation, then pick a judge who respects the people's representation, not a judge who would impose his own representation in spite of it. You'll also hear talk that somehow this supposed representation will bring about a re-legitimization of the court, a revived national unity now that the court looks demographically more like the country at large. This is the point of Patrick Leahy, the longtime Senate Judiciary Committee chair.
I worry when it becomes just a one-party kind of vote. I wish we'd go back to the time when we'd come together. The Supreme Court, which should have credibility and should have the respect of the American people, that respect is going away because they're seeing it as a political, polarized body. I want to see it come back to where people look at it and say, yes, that's the Supreme Court that can appeal to all of us.
Well, sure. It would be nice for us all to unify around the Supreme Court's legitimacy, but what forms the basis for that legitimacy? We can't just declare it so. There has to be an underlying value about which we all agree for that to happen. It can't be partisan politics. By definition, we don't agree on that. It can't be group demographic identity because we all belong to different ones. The only possible answer is, again, the Supreme Court's purpose, the neutral application of the law as written, without regard for any other influence, personal, political, or otherwise. If you want unity around the rule of law, stop considering or prioritizing any other factor. In pursuit of unity around the rule of law, Biden's selection criteria should be criticized, not celebrated, because it makes the unifying principle secondary or irrelevant. And so again, on this stated priority too, it is constitutional fidelity that solves the problem. Once we agree on a neutral set of rules, well, there you go. There's your precious unity. Lastly, there's the claim that this representation will produce better outcomes. And this is really the quiet part out loud. Mazie Hirono said on MSNBC this week, "I want a justice who will consider factors outside of the law and consider the social impact of her decisions before making them."
And I'm looking for someone who's going to be not only highly qualified, but who really brings to the judiciary the kind of diversity that I'd like. Someone who will consider the impact, the effects of whatever decision making is on people in our country, so that they're not making decisions just based on, which I would like them to base it on law, which would be nice, but I'd like a justice who also will take into consideration the real life impact of the decisions he or she will be making.
Yeah, and that sounds like a good North Star. I want to thank you.
No, that is not a good North Star, because that is as southerly as the stars get. That is a total inversion and betrayal of the role of the court. Well, I'd like decisions based only on the law, but also I want a whole series of considerations totally outside of the law. Why do we even have a constitution if it's only part of that decision making and the rest is just up to the personal whims of the judge? That is not the rule of law. That is the rule of feelings, and we're just going to say that some people's feelings are more important than others. But again, even if we take Hirono's gripe at its strongest, that the Supreme Court makes decisions that have massive impact on our lives, and that's a problem, right? And the Constitution is designed to decentralize and minimize that impact. So follow what the Constitution says. Restrict the federal government to its proper role, restore power to the states, and watch all your massive unjust impacts greatly reduced. And where they do happen, they're escapable by moving to the next state over. In other words, the solution to the problems the Democrats are raising is the one thing they don't talk about and won't consider: constitutional fidelity. Prioritize the Constitution and pick a judge who will apply it as written, not as he wants it to be. You like representation? Great. So does the Constitution. It establishes a system to keep decisions as local and representative as possible. You like trust in institutions and unity? Great. Let's unify around a neutral set of rules for how we make our political decisions. That's what the Constitution is. You want bad decisions to have minimal impact? Great. So does the Constitution. It makes sure that no one person or institution has unaccountable, inescapable power. In a world of principle, that would be the sensible conclusion. But of course, this is no world of principle. This is a world of convenience and smokescreen. And so none of those stated goods are in fact goods for their own sake in the view of those who claim them. Is representation actually a good for its own sake, or do they just mean representation of their friends and their views? Because I'm not hearing a lot of celebration for the representation that Justice Thomas provides. Is unity actually a good for its own sake? Because I suspect a unified decision reversing the constitutional butchery that is Roe versus Wade would not be cheered, even if it had unified public opinion to go with it. Is reducing the ability of any one person or any one institution to negatively impact everybody else actually a good thing for its own sake? Well, if it was, we probably wouldn't be fighting to make sure that it's my feelings that dominate everybody else's. Instead, we'd stay true to systems that make sure that nobody's feelings do that. Well, it's easy to say for the cis-het white male scum, perhaps they'd say, your perspective has dominated this country since its inception. Fine, I tell you what, restart this video and tape a picture of a black woman over me. Pretend it's Aunt Jemima's unshowable face saying all of this instead, and see if that changes your mind. And if it doesn't, and you still find fault in these ideas, well, that's really the point, isn't it? These claimed values of racial and gender diversity actually hold none. It's just the ideas. It was always the ideas. It will always be the ideas. Any contention otherwise is just a front. And just like you might find with that Aunt Jemima cutout, fronts deserve skepticism, not celebration. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Parler, that is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.